Hello, everybody. This is Francis Acunzo. Thank you for joining today. We will begin this presentation in just a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. This is Francis Acunzo. We will begin this presentation in just a few more minutes. again, this is Francis Acunzo. Thank you for joining me today for this webinar. Everyone is on mute throughout the webinar, but if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the question box, the dialog box, which is most likely located at the lower right of your screen. Right? We'd love to have you ask as many questions as possible. Good afternoon, and many of you, good morning as well in other time zones. This is Francis Acunzo, the chairman of the Aesthetic Business Institute, which is the organization that is the leader in aesthetic medical business intelligence. I'm also the founder and CEO of Akara Partners, a business consultancy and marketing agency for medical spas and cosmetic practices. And I am the Chief Experience Officer of the rapidly growing medical spa franchise company, MedSpa 810. Today's webinar, Keeping Your Practice Agile Amidst the COVID Crisis, is co-sponsored by the Aesthetic Business Institute and Akara Partners. Before we begin, let's talk about the current state of the aesthetic medical industry. I've been doing a few webinars during this time, and this is how I like to begin each time, us knowing and being on the same page as to what's happening out there in the world of aesthetic medicine. We know that practice doors are beginning to reopen over the next 5 to 45 days. There may be some that are currently open. I know Georgia is one state that has opened up. Some people were holding back a little bit before they were ready to open. But definitely in Kansas City, Missouri, where our guest today is from, they'll be opening up the beginning of next week, so within 5 days. What else is happening out there? Well, cash flow is becoming urgent for many practices. I know some of you have received the PPP money, the paycheck program money that has been available. Others are waiting frantically for that. Some of you have received the EIDL, the emergency fund money for disaster relief. Many are still waiting. So it's an anxious time, no matter how you look at it. You have providers and support staff that are beginning to transition back to work. They're anxious about going back to work. You have many that are still on furlough, waiting to get back to work. So it's a difficult time for everyone involved, owners and staff members alike. The government aid, the PPP money, EIDL money is reaching businesses, but we need to make it happen as fast as we can. I know it's a lot to move that much money all at once, and they've done a fairly good job so far, and we have to be somewhat patient. So that's the situation that we're currently in, and before before today, no one was open, or before this week, no one was open. So it's beginning to get better, but it's still going to be a long time coming over the next couple of months. Joining me today is our special guest, Dr. Kristen Watkins. Dr. Watkins is the founder, owner, and medical director of Amidst Aesthetics, which provides advanced medical aesthetics, regenerative medicine, healthy aging, and personalized wellness medicine to the greater Kansas City, Missouri area. Dr. Kristen Watkins is board certified in medical and family medicine and was chief resident and most honored resident of family medicine at her training program. She is certified and is pursuing her fellowship in integrative metabolic and nutrition medicine with the School of Medicine and Health Sciences at George Washington University. She focuses her entire practice on advanced medical aesthetics, regenerative medicine, healthy aging, and personalized wellness medicine. She is the owner and the visionary of Amidst Aesthetics and Optimal Wellness, is involved in every aspect of the practice, and works alongside with her expert medical and aesthetic staff. Dr. Watkins is trained in bioidentical hormones, medical weight loss, and functional metabolic nutrition medicine. She has personal interest in patient wellness and healthy aging and has a desire for all patients to achieve their lifestyle. She also has a huge passion for regenerative medicine and focuses a lot of her recent research and practice on advanced therapies such as exosomes, ozone, PRP, peptides for nutritional therapy. She is a national regenerative medicine trainer for nurse practitioners with Regen Ed and is the proud owner of Regenerative Treatment Centers of Leawood. Dr. Kristen Watkins is an active member and most recently a newly national faculty member of the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, A4M. She is a native of Kansas City and lives there with her husband and 3 children, Miles, Madeline, and Macy, who are twins. Her passion outside of ANU are her family and friends, and she enjoys traveling, cooking, and the great outdoors. Dr. Watkins has opened 2 locations in Kansas City. The one on the left is her first location, opened 9 years ago, and the 2 photographs on the right are her new location in the River Market area of Kansas City. Dr. Watkins, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Great. There we go. Okay.
Thank you so much for having me today. This is a great opportunity for me to be able to talk about some of the things that we've been able to implement during the COVID crisis in the last several weeks. And, it's been a really hard time for a lot of us business owners in aesthetics. And I think that the landscape of business and aesthetics will likely be forever changed. So I think this is a really good opportunity to speak to some of those things with the health of the business and also our staff and our patients.
Great. Dr. Watkins, why don't we start by you telling us how you got into the world of aesthetic medicine and wellness? Well,
okay.
Where did it start?
Yeah, I guess it's a long story. As a child, I was always sick, so that influenced my decision to want to become a physician from a pretty young age. And I never really wavered from that. I always knew I was going to be a physician of some capacity. And then in medical school, when I was trying to determine what I wanted to do in residency, I was having a really hard time struggling between women's health and OB and dermatology. And so when I found family medicine, that really spoke to my heart because I knew I could do really whatever I wanted with it in the future. So I knew I could do derm, I knew I could do women's health. And so I decided to do family medicine so I could pursue really any avenue and kind of take whatever facet or lane that I felt I needed. And in residency, my chief year, I spent a lot of my electives in integrative medicine practices and medical spas and in business development. So I had a feeling that I was going to go that way, and I really considered opening up my own practice straight out of residency. But I got offered a job with a federal program with the National Health Service Corps to get my loans paid back. So of course I took that opportunity. I thought that was really important to get my loans paid off. And so while I was in family medicine, I opened up ANU actually on the side and was seeing patients on evenings and weekends. And I was in a small room, probably 200 square feet. We rented a space from an urgent care facility. And then a couple years later, as I got busier, I moved upstairs to about 2,000 square feet. And I had one employee that was the esthetician and the manager and the front desk and basically did everything. And then about 4 years ago, I had just had twins. And what better time to stop your other full-time career than when you come back from maternity leave with twins and a 2-year-old at home.
Right.
And I really felt that something was pulling me to, instead of work for 2 companies and be medical director, I was actually chief medical officer of that other company, to do it all for myself and to do it all for ANU. So I put all my efforts into ANU about 4 years ago. And the family medicine part of me decided at that time that I also needed to bring in something. And so I started with bioidentical hormones and weight loss, and that really opened Pandora's box. And I decided that I needed to do something additional. So that's when I started to get trained in functional medicine. So that's when we transitioned from a new aesthetics to a new aesthetics and optimal wellness about 4 years ago when I went full time, and I combined the two practices into one because they are pretty much the same demographic. So that's kind of how I started. And then 2.5 years ago, I was at the point where I couldn't take on any new patients. I was at capacity working with a couple other staff members. So I either had to close my practice to new patients or expand. And I took the big risk and expanded to 6,000 square feet. And about a year ago, I decided to start looking in the younger area of downtown in the River Market. And the first day I started looking, I didn't intend to find a space, but I found a space that very day. And we started building the second location that just opened in January, which is lovely timing for this crisis.
Yeah. So you literally just opened your second location, right? With a soft
Correct.
opening, it happened in January 21, and the official grand opening happened, I'm sorry, January 21, and then the official grand opening was February 7th.
Correct.
It was just before the pandemic hit. Tell us
Correct. Couple
about your new location. Tell us a little bit more about it than you have already, and how did you handling this stalled launch pan out for you? What did you do differently once you had to shut the doors?
Sure. So we did a lot of things differently. First, even just building it, it took a lot longer just because, 6 months ago, there was actually so much construction and building that it took us a lot longer than we anticipated it would take. So we weren't even able to finish until New Year's, soft opening, like you mentioned, in January, and then the grand opening. So we were open for about probably about 8 weeks before this happened, and we were actually hitting our numbers pretty well. The reason I wanted to go in that area is because it's a younger demographic area where there's walking and restaurants and bars, and our other location is more suburban. And so there's not any foot traffic, and we're under a condo of 250 people that are the ages of 25 to 35. So I really was trying to hit a different demographic, a younger demographic with the new location. And as soon as this happened, I kind of had a feeling the week before it happened that something was going on. I have friends that practice in Washington, and I knew it was coming our way. And so actually, before Kansas City closed, it was the Thursday before it closed, I actually started to look into, because we do IV nutritional therapy and I knew supplies would start to run short. I was on the phone all day on that Thursday before we closed, trying to get IV fluids and vitamin C and zinc, and ordering supplements that I knew would go on shortage, such as oral vitamin C, zinc, immunotone, immune support. And I was literally on every website I could find with every vendor I had, trying to get all these things in before they all went on back order. And I would be online buying something, and by the time I put in my credit card, it was gone. And it was, I knew that things were changing very fast, because that morning I could order whatever I wanted, and by the end of the day, things were already gone. So I
Wow.
knew I knew the face of things were changing. I couldn't get IV zinc by the end of the day. I mean, it was crazy. I couldn't get IV fluids. McKesson went on hold for all gloves, all gowns, all IV fluids by the end of that very day that I started looking for things. So we were scheduled to go to our spring break house, which is our beach house down in Gulf Shores, and I did go ahead and decide to go, but I knew that there would be the chance that we'd be closing. So I had a big meeting with my staff before I went, and told them that there likely will be a lot of changes coming, and I'll be in the best place to figure that out, which is not seeing patients, because when I'm seeing patients, I can't necessarily run the business as well. So I knew with me having that week off that I would actually be able to support my staff even more. So when we were down there for spring break, Kansas City had closed the next week. They closed about 7 days after I left. And we had closed the practice 2 days before Kansas City called it, just because our staff was very nervous. They were getting very anxious about what was going on in the city. So I closed the practice to aesthetics 3 days before Kansas City closed. And I knew that would have some very big impacts on the company and on our staff. So I really started with some staff meetings and some staff emails lining out what we were going to do, just to bear with me if I could, just get with me till Monday, and I'll have a plan laid out. So I spent that time figuring out exactly what we were going to do, and it was pretty detailed. And of course, everything has been changing day by day. I've never written so many policies and protocols that will change in 24 and 48 hours. I feel like it's all I've done for the last 6 weeks, and I'm sure most people can agree with
Yeah.
me. I write something, I implement it, and then 2 days later, I tell my staff, never mind, that's totally different. I have to completely change that. But during that time, because that happened, I actually ended up staying down in Alabama for 3 weeks to get the plan in place before I came back. I really felt like my staff needed a week to kind of gauge what was going on in the economy and in their household and in America. So most of my staff at that time, I had allowed them just to stay home and kind of figure out what we were going to do. So I asked them just to bear with me. And that week is when I started the protocol of who was going to work in the office, who was not going to work in the office, who needed to be on unemployment, and what really would benefit the company the most. And so eventually, what we decided is 6 staff, including myself, would stay at the practice, and the rest were laid off or furloughed until we could get the PPP. I started applying immediately. Missouri didn't even open till about 3 days after I heard about PPP, so I already had my paperwork submitted to my SBA bank before they even opened it in Missouri. So I was pretty prepared for that. I was watching a lot of chat groups on Facebook and reading everything that I possibly could. So I felt pretty prepared for what was coming, but like I said, everything changes every 24 hours right now. So I
Well,
don't know how much you can prepare, but
well, you had incredible foresight to do all those things, and a lot of planning went in to your system and to ensure that everything was going to be set up correctly. Uh, so, you officially closed your doors on March 20th, right? Is that the correct date?
we closed to
And
all of the 20th.
on the 20th. Um, and I've heard that since then, you've been able to generate over $168,000 in service and product revenue, plus $60,000 in membership revenue since that closing date. Um,
Mhm.
it so much of that has to do with the fact that you were preparing and you had that foresight to order supplies and be ready and still continue business to some degree, right?
Oh, yes.
Tell us about your sales and marketing program you implemented that drove that sales level.
Sure. So as soon as this was coming, I knew that we were going to really have to ramp up online sales because I knew we would either be closed or we would just be doing curbside. So the first thing I did was I got in touch with our website developer and had them start to update our e-commerce site. So our online shopping. So we had 50 of our top products on there, and I had them add another 30 with new supplements and new skincare that we were carrying, and it just hadn't been updated in 6 months because that's what happens to all of us. And so that's
Right.
where I started. Yep, I started there and had them update it. And what I did was I put everything that was retail 20% off and free shipping for anything over 150. And there was a lot of debate about should we put it on sale or shouldn't we? And I really felt like to give the patients 20% off and help them maintain their supplements, which they needed, and their skincare, which they needed to, protect their investments. I thought it was important to do a discount. And if it's just going to sit on our shelves and not make any profit or revenue whatsoever, I really felt that 20% off and free shipping would help. And as soon as we did that, we really started to increase sales. And so some of the other things that I did, I thought about promos that we could do, and I started to bundle supplements. So I did an immune boosting supplement package where they didn't even have to think about it. It was just 3 supplements. We bundled it for them, sent it to them. It was vitamin C, zinc, and immunotone. And then we did a more advanced package that also had probiotics and vitamin D and vitamin B. So I really had 2 bundles, and we started seeing those fly off out the door. And the biggest thing that I really did initially was we do B12 shots and turbo shots, which are mixed shots, if people have heard about those, but ours are a little bit more souped up. They've got B complex and B12 in them to help with detox and metabolism and weight loss, and then also our glutathione shots. So I discounted those and just made it a flat 20 across the board. And what we did is we were having those pick up curbside, and we did so much business in that. I just promoted it on social media, and I boosted it for about $50 on Facebook, which I don't usually do, but it went crazy. So that was a huge thing that we did. The online shopping and the curbside pickup, and then the IM shots that we carry. And then I also started Bank Your Botox while we're closed for $11 per unit. That has been wildly successful because we don't ever discount our Botox. So gave them a great chance to get Botox at a discount, which we don't ever do. And we allowed them to bank it until December, and they could bank up to 150 units. And then we did some other wellness things. I created some IV packages that had really high dose vitamin C. And then I also brought in some new peptides that are thymosin alpha that boost the immune system. And then just recently, yesterday, I formulated with my esthetician, because staff came back on Monday for webinars and some staff, some protocols, etc. training. We started some home peels and facial kits that we are going to blast out on social media today. So we're going to sell them some home facial kits and some light home peel kits that they can do at home. So I am just always thinking of ways to get them engaged. And one of the ways that I've done that, I would say primarily, I mean, we are very, very big into social media. We're have a lot of followers on social media, but I have really used this opportunity because a lot of people are so bombarded with email right now, as we always are. I mean, I know myself, I'm getting, 100 webinars a day and other things about COVID. So what I did is I went on social media and started just doing little short 3-minute videos. And I had no idea that they would go crazy, but everybody wants to see what it is as the face of the company. What am I doing as the physician? Am I real? Am I going through this with them? What is my experience as I go through this? So I just started posting little things about my home regimen, my supplements I take at home, how I make my protein shake, about our IV therapy, about all these things that I do and I've incorporated in my life. And the reason that I have them in practice is because I've brought them in to my life as well. So that has gone crazy. So pretty much the vast majority of everything that we're doing is on social media, and it's been me as the forefront of that, which I'm not a big fan of, but it's what they want to see. So
It's working.
yeah, it works. And I think it's important because they really want to see the real us. They want to see our staff, and they want to see us as the business owners, and they want to see what we're going through and the reality of it. And I think it really has kept my patients engaged, thinking about, their skincare and their supplements and self-care, and that it's important, even though we're going through this crisis, that we can actually go through it together and come out on the other side together.
And I think that something that's really important right now is personal connection.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like you're really leaning on that personal connection button to keep that clientele or the potential clientele engaged.
Very much.
Yeah. So that's. Are you using any other connection methods? Instagram, Facebook. What else are you using to reach out and actually be there for the client?
Primarily, we're doing Instagram and Facebook. And like I said, there's a couple promotions that I boosted on Facebook, and it really did help. I think it's because social media use is so up right now that even for $50, when budgets are really tight, that $50 went a very, very, very long way because everybody's on social media all day long right now. And then I sent out a few newsletters. Right when we closed, I sent out a newsletter, and I talked about COVID from a functional medicine approach, about supplements and taking care of yourself and getting proper sleep, and the pillars of functional medicine. So I approached it from that way as a physician, and that got a lot of attention and a lot of support, and that's really what helped us with supplements and IV nutrition, etc. And
Right.
I just recently sent out another newsletter yesterday about how to maintain things and are we going to go back into society and what that looks like. So those newsletters have really helped a lot because they came from me personally, not really from the company. They came from me as a functional physician. And the other thing that I started, I'm going to do a couple webinars myself for patients. The talks that I usually do on regenerative medicine and sexual rejuvenation and wellness, I'm actually going to promote those out as webinars. And I boosted one, or actually I just put it on Facebook and Instagram on Sunday. and we've got 150 attendees for the one that's coming up. So I'm going
That's
to
excellent.
post. I know I'm going to do another one on IV therapy. I'm lining those up for the next couple weeks, but I think it's just a matter of connecting with them and using this opportunity to teach them things that they want to know. We just don't have the time to learn about them. Same with my staff, right? With watching their webinars and e-learning. I think this is a great opportunity to be in front of patients, teaching them when most of us don't have time to do this when we're seeing patients all day.
How about the use of telemedicine? Have you been doing telemedicine? How actively does it
Yes.
work for you?
So every day we're doing telemedicine. The week that I was trying to figure out what in the world we were doing, we didn't do any telemedicine that week. I needed to set up a
Yep.
go-to meeting and get a secure source and, kind of set up what that looked like with my staff as far as sending them forms ahead of time and billing, et cetera. And then we started it that very next week. And I basically converted all of my wellness patients over to telemedicine. So that was very successful because they didn't have to wait on getting their hormones. They didn't have to wait on getting any of their refills. We had a private phlebotomist who actually could draw them, so they didn't have to go to these big labs or hospitals. We had private phlebotomists go and take care of their labs, and then I could follow up with them over the phone. So all my patients, I think I only had 2 out of the last 4 or 5 weeks that actually wanted to wait until they could see me in person, whenever that may be, and the rest all converted to telemedicine. Then we opened it up to acute medicine for patients that couldn't get into, didn't want to go to urgent cares, didn't want to go to a facility where they would be exposed. They could call us, since I am family medicine, and see us for telemedicine, whether it be functional or traditional medicine. And that's been very, very successful. And my
Right.
patients love it because they get to talk to me about their health in their pajamas from home.
That's perfect. Uh,
Mhm.
are you using it, or have you used telemedicine to do aesthetic consults at
We
all?
have my patient care coordinator and one of my RNs. Both of them stayed in the office. So because they were in the office, they could have done it from home as well. But because they were still on payroll and in the office, they were doing it from home virtually to talk about, especially for our, we did a BOGO event, buy one syringe of filler, get one half off, which we always do in April. So my patients were very much anticipating it. And for Botox, for patients who didn't know what they needed, we could do virtual consults to help them decide what they should purchase. And then obviously for skincare and laser, we've done quite a few virtual consults between the RN injector and the patient care coordinator.
Project out 12 months from now, 18 months, 24 months. Will you still be using telemedicine? Do you think it's going to be now an active part of your practice?
I do. I very much do. I think patients are much more being more computer savvy with everything that's been going on in the last 6 weeks. So they're, my older patients used to be afraid of doing technology and didn't want to get on the iPhone and didn't want to FaceTime or do Zoom or whatever it may be. And in the last 6 weeks, they've definitely become very comfortable with it, almost because of force. But the ones that didn't feel comfortable before actually are starting to prefer that method. So I would anticipate that a lot of my patients, especially I have patients that live an hour, 2 hours away, they will probably all continue to be on telemedicine is my anticipation. And I do think some people will do virtual consults as well because it really diminishes the amount of time that they either have to be out of their life or out of the office. They don't have to drive to the office and drive back. They can just get on a phone call for 15, 30 minutes and go about their day. I think it's very convenient for them and they're finding that out.
Excellent. Interesting. Now that the government is loosening the reins on businesses, allowing them to open their doors, this pre-vaccine time, so there are still many concerns.
Oh yeah.
Uh, how are you handling, or what have you done to handle the change of conducting daily business in your practice? The precautions that you are going to take for your staff and for your patients.
Sure. So Missouri opens Monday, but in Kansas City proper, we are closed until May 15th. So both of my locations are in the city limits of Kansas City, so we can open May 16th. But I've already established a protocol because I had mentioned that my staff came back in the office on Monday, so I had to write a pretty extensive protocol about that. And a lot of it has to do with sanitizing. So sanitizing in between patients. So what we're going to have to do is add buffers in between patients so that we have more time, so that we're not running behind. Our email blast that goes out and our text that are reminders. Basically, I edited that and it tells patients that they need to bring a mask from home if they have one, to be patient with us. They're going to have to be screened in the vestibule, to stay home if they have any symptoms. Um, we will definitely be enforcing social distancing. I'm enforcing it for my staff. So we moved workstations that were close together. We have them working in offices, or we moved the nurses station where they have 6 feet between them. Even our break room, we can only have 2 people in our break room at a time. We can only have one person in the supply closet at a time. So we've had to make some adjustments there. We've had to move out our IV suite and change that around so that there's social distancing. We've we've actually been able to get in some PPE, which is nice. I've been ordering masks, surgical masks, of course,
Right.
as we go, and things that I ordered 6 to 8 weeks ago are just now showing up. So we do have the equipment. I know a lot of people don't have that, so we're fortunate right now to have the gloves and the gowns and the masks and things that we need for staff. But I know a lot of people are struggling with that because they either donated it to their local hospital or didn't have it. We've just been trying to order over time and anticipate the needs. And I'm still ordering things because I know in 6 to 8 weeks I'm going to need another supply. So that's one thing I think is important. Um, I've also continued to ramp up our shipping and online because I think that's going to continue. I really do think people are going to continue to want to shop online and have things shipped to them rather than coming into storefronts.
Yep.
So I think our online sales are just going to continue to go up, and our retail in-office sales might stay the same or go down, but I see online going up where we're shipping out things. Um, we have a lot of protocols for staff and patients, and there's all these questions, on these chat forums with physicians and aesthetics. What are we going to do? My staff are going to wear masks. We're going to make the patients wear masks when they come in. We're going to screen them. They can only come in one at a time. There can only be a certain amount of people in the lobby. They have to be socially spaced. We've thought about calling them on their cell phone when they're in their car. If our lobby gets too busy, we'll have them wait outside and give them a call
Yep.
whenever our lobby's less busy, so they can come in and come directly to their room. It's definitely going to be a work in progress for all of us, and especially because we'll be some of the first in Kansas City to be opening. It'll be
Yep.
interesting to see how this dynamic changes, but the first couple of weeks until we get a handle on things, we will definitely be using all CDC requirements and recommendations for PPE and social distancing.
I think one thing that's important for people is to don't feel like you're taking it to an extreme. You should take it to an extreme, and then
Right.
you can back off it after
That's
you
right.
put practice in place, right? After
That's
two
right.
weeks, you'll have enough business intelligence put together to say, well, we don't need that redundancy or whatever it may
Hmm.
be.
Hmm.
I
And,
know I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I would say I know here we started off with a relaunch list that was 3 pages long. It then went to 4, then went to 5, and it's probably now going to be almost 6 pages. I
Mm-hmm.
know I've seen your protocol; it's excellent, and it's very very detailed. And that's what you need to do. You need to just make sure you have the protocols in place and um, you know have it be detailed because you don't want any mistakes when you're
Right.
talking about human life in this
Right.
situation.
Yeah.
So
And
let's go even out further.
sure.
Post vaccine, how do you think what's happening right now, the fact that this virus occurred, this pandemic occurred, how do you think it will have a long-term effect on how we do day-to-day business in the aesthetic medical world?
One thing that I had mentioned, I think a lot of it is going to be not so much storefront sometimes, if that can be avoided I think this is a really good opportunity for people that don't have online shopping set up, that this is something they should probably look into because I think e-commerce is growing. We've seen that with Amazon, with other suppliers, obviously Target and everybody else, that everybody really is going towards those online markets. So I think that's something that's really important to look into. I think even if you haven't been offering telemedicine at this point, I think it's something you still should look into because patients want it. We've seen the demand for our complimentary virtual consultations and then our medical consultations that have costs. I think that landscape is going to change where people want to have the opportunity to not come in to a location and still get the services they need because now at this point they've been used to that for the last 6 to 8 weeks in their locations. Um,
Yep.
and then as far as business, Oh, I wish I could predict, but I think that small business will be forever changed because of
Yeah.
this. And I think aesthetics will too. So when we look at, there's been a lot of questions about, are people going to flood into our offices, or are they really going to take a step back and watch their revenue?
Dr. Watkins, I think we just lost our audio. Let me, on your dialog box, I'm sorry, can you look, for some reason it's saying you're self-muted.
It's working
There,
now. I don't know what happened.
there we go. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It just self-muted you for some reason. You're fine now though. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Um, I really do think that aesthetics will change for a lot of people and business will as well. I think we just have to rethink how people are thinking about spending their money. And so people have, asked me, do I think that people are going to come in and still spend the same amount of money, or are we going to see a downturn? At this time, we have people calling and our books are so full. I don't even know how we're going to actually get them all in. So that's one adjustment that we've made is I'm going to have to work more days. We're probably going to have to do some extended hours and Saturdays when we open these first few weeks just to get these patients in. And then I think we'll all have to see if there is a downturn after that. But with me being in business for almost 10 years and having over 4,000 patients, I don't know if we will personally see the downturn, but I think some small companies definitely might. I really do.
Yeah, yeah. The weak will may fall off. The
Hmm.
weaker, newer practices. But I think you're
Right.
right. You've been in the market for quite a while, and you have strength to be in that market, and most likely you'll do fine. Um, all right,
Let's
why
hope.
don't we open it up to our audience? And let me just make a few adjustments here. I want to show, let's have the screen up. Okay. So if anybody has any questions, um, take a moment and type it into your dialog box, which is, I think, for most screens, it's located in the lower right of your screen or on the right side of your screen. And we will entertain if there are any questions. We'll just give it a moment. Don't be shy about your questions. I have somebody raising their hand. Um, let me. I can unmute this person. Maybe they want. This. Ah, here comes a question. Do you see business being directed more towards preventive medicine in the future? Is the first question.
Absolutely. So I've seen a lot of people much more interested in integrative and functional and preventative medicine since this came out with all of the talk about ozone and IV therapy and vitamin C and zinc and things like that for preventing disease rather than being reactive and trying to find a way to treat disease. So um, I think, excuse me, with functional medicine, my whole entire part of my practice is actually to prevent disease and find the cause of disease rather than medicate it. So I have had more interest in my functional and wellness side of my practice than ever before since this started. I've had more questions, more people asking me for webinars, private messaging me than ever in my entire practice of medicine.
Interesting. Another question they have is, do you have an example of specific staff training you are implementing at the moment
Oh, sure. For my staff?
for your staff? Yes.
Okay. So a few things that we're doing, we're basically what we did is I made this calendar with my administrator. She's very good at spreadsheets. And so we made a spreadsheet of every single day what my staff is going to do. So because we have a Halo and we have Cool Tone and Cool Sculpting, all of the brands that we used, we actually made a schedule and a calendar of all of those webinars, and we put the staff's name next to them that we wanted them to listen to. So it's just a big calendar of the next 2 weeks before we open. And then what I asked all my staff to do is give me the 5 top things they learned from every webinar that they're assigned. And then I'm going to take those 5 top things that they have learned and make an in-service training manual from those. So it's a great way for me to actually be sure that they learn something from it and then use that data to make a training manual about our top services and products. And the other thing that I did is I signed them each things that are in their wheelhouse. So I gave everybody the protocol book. So the front desk got the front desk protocol book, and my estheticians got the esthetician protocol book. And their job is to go through and make sure it's all the updated forms from Drive, from our Google Drive. They have to make sure that it's all the updated forms. If something is outdated, it's their job to update that. We're writing some new protocols about what does it look like from the time the patient walks in the very front door until they leave. So I've got a lot of people doing certain protocols and working on things, and then those were assigned to certain people, and those have to come back to me by this Friday. And that way I have another week to review those protocols and get them into place. And then one cool thing that we're doing is the week before we open, all staff is going to be in the office, and I made sure that was okay with them. We had, we have lots of measures in place. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a whole week of culture and training and what that looks like at a new, because we have some new staff because we had just opened a new location and it was so crazy busy getting the new location open that we're going to do a week of training about culture of a new and what a new stands for, and go through our protocols and procedures and do some team building exercises. And that last day on Friday before we open the following Monday, we're going to do a big staff photo and a fun day where we can just get together and really show some camaraderie and start this off on a new foot the coming Monday.
Excellent. Those are great answers to that question. Very helpful. Before we end, Dr. Watkins, do you have anything else you'd like to add or tell the group that's on this webinar today?
The one thing that I did not talk about for a second was our memberships, and that has really, really helped us. Yeah. I always knew that our memberships would help us someday if we ever got in a pinch. And so I created the memberships about 2 years ago. I never had a membership program because I didn't want to do a use it or lose it program. So what I did was implemented a membership program that's $150 a month, and they actually get to keep 125 of that in their spa bank. So they keep 125, we keep 25. They get a free service every month from a menu of about 10 things, and then they get 10% off all of their services. And so we generate about $65,000 a month on the first of every month from our memberships. And I knew that would really hold us over, but we only had a few people that wanted to pause it. We didn't have really anybody cancel it, but we had about 20, 25 people pause it. I thought it'd be a lot more, but they really find the value in it. And they know that while this is going on, they're accruing their spa bank. So when they come get their Botox, when we reopen, they've got $250 from the last 2 months accrued in their spa bank. We're going to give them those free services back that they missed, and they get 10% off when they come back in. So that has been paramount in our success as well. So I really encourage people to look at memberships that are similar to that.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for joining me today, Dr. Watkins. It's been, I think, very helpful for everyone to listen to you talk about your practice, your new practice, and your older practice, and give us your insights into how to handle the situation we're in at the moment. Thank you. I really greatly appreciate it.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. If there's any additional questions for anybody on this webinar or questions about ACARA or the Aesthetic Business Institute, up on the screen on the left side, there's Alex Aconzo, who I'd want you to reach out to for ACARA questions, and his email is there. And on the right side is Erica Collins and her email for any ABI questions. We have some discount programs going on for the Aesthetic Business Institute as well. One thing I know, everyone at ACARA, everyone at the Aesthetic Business Institute, and everyone at MedSpa 810 would like to thank all of our first responders across the country. And I want to thank you for joining us today for this webinar. Have a great day.